All right, we're moving on to our third tutorial for the second page in the mini album, both the front and the back. So stay tuned, and as always, if you're interested in seeing more, make sure you click on that subscribe button. Hey and howdy everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing the second page, front and back, for this mini album. These pages are pretty simplistic in comparison to the last one, although the next set of pages are going to be quite a bit more in depth, so stay tuned for that. So I'm going to start by cutting down a piece of pattern paper to cover a full sheet or a full page of the mini album. So I'm going to cut this to 10 5/8 by 7 3/4. And again, I'm using this very pretty paper with the bench on it. I think I mentioned last time this is probably my favorite paper out of the collection. And this one has gold foil accents. This is a 12 by 12 piece. Alright, so I decided that having just a singular page was a little boring and that I wanted a little bit more real estate available in the album. So I'm going to go ahead and create a second flap page like we did for the front of the first page. So I'm going to cut this down to 10 3/4 by 8.5, and I'm going to score at the 1/2 inch mark along the long edge so that I end up with a page size of 8 inches by 10 3/4 inches. Alright, so now that I have my flap ready, I am going to choose some pattern paper to go on it, and I think I'm just going to leave it completely open. I'm not going to add any additional elements to it. So let's go ahead and glue this down. And then I'm going to trim my pattern paper that I chose earlier for these pages down to the standard 10 5/8 by 7 3/4. And before I glue everything down, I am just going to use a couple of magnets to help hold this page closed. Unlike the front of the first page, there isn't a lot of weight to help hold this page closed on its own, so I'm going to add a couple of magnets just to give it an extra boost. So I'm going to add a little bit of extra liquid adhesive just around the double-sided adhesive tape on the magnets, just to give it a little bit of extra hold because I don't want these to move later. So let's apply some liquid adhesive to the back of our pattern paper and apply our 3 pieces to our front of our second page. So now it's time to get started on the back of our second page. And this one is a little bit more complicated and has a little bit more fun to it. So let's get started. So one of the reasons that I really like Prima collections is because they always come with these wonderful journaling cards. So this is one of the 12 by 12 sheets. So this has foil accents on it. And I'm just going to cut them all apart so that I have all 12 of these very pretty 3 by 4 journaling cards ready to use. So let's see if we can find some pretty paper for backing some of these. So I think I have the paper that I'm going to use, and I have decided that I'm going to do some small 4 1/4 by 3 1/4 photo mats to go along with these. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this large pattern paper down to a standard page size, which is 10 5/8 by 7 3/4. and now I'm going to grab some of my white cardstock and I'm going to trim it down to fit my journaling cards. Now, if I had been wise when I was doing this and thought about what I was doing, I probably could have done these as one single piece and just scored, but alas, I didn't. And so I'm going to add some extra steps here. You could just cut your pages so that they were the appropriate length the other way. So here I just cut a piece of 8.5 by 11 in half lengthwise so that I ended up with sheets that were 4 1/4 by 11. And now I'm going to score them at the 3 1/4 mark. And as you can see, I cut it. Which is not what the end result is. So I'm cutting another one, or scoring another one at 3 1/4 and cutting at 3 3/4. So I'm cutting them to 3 3/4 by 4 1/4 and scoring at the 1/2 inch mark on the long side. So I did 4 of those, and then I will do 4 of the smaller cards that are 3 1/4 by 4 1/4, and then I have to repeat the process because I don't have enough, and you'll see in a moment how that works out. What I should have done was I wanted 4, so I should have cut 2 pieces of cardstock to 4 1/4 by 11, and then scored at 3 1/4, 6 1/2, 9 3/4, and then cut off the excess. At which point I would have ended up with the same result without all of this extra effort. So do as I say, not as I do. Lesson learned. Sometimes when you're creating albums and you're working on it, you don't really know exactly where you want to end up at the end. So I sometimes end up doing things like this. But now I know for the future that this is an element that I like for my album and that there is a much easier way to do it. And I wanted to include this in my tutorial video to show that we're not all perfect and that everything is a learning process, even for those of us who have been doing it for quite a bit longer than others. Alright, so let's start putting these small 4 1/4 by 3 1/4 photo mats together. So I'm just going to take the 2 pieces with the flap on them, the 1/2 inch flap, and I'm going to adhere them on either side of my 4 1/4 by 3 1/4 piece of cardstock. So now that we have the initial piece put together, I'm going to put some magnets on them because I want them to stay closed. I don't want them to just hang open and get folded or creased in any way. So I'm going to put magnets on each one, just one set. As you can see, these are pretty strong magnets as I struggle to get them apart. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one on the cover underneath the 3x4 journaling card, and then I'm going to put one on the back side, and putting one on the front that will be covered by the journaling card and one on the back just means that the magnets will be hidden and will have less chance of falling off. Now that I have it put together and I have the magnet on and working the way I intended, I'm going to put a little bit of liquid adhesive around the magnet itself, and then I'm going to glue down my journaling card to the front cover. And with my first one done and working, I am going to go ahead and do all 3 of the remaining sets. So looking at my journaling cards that I had previously picked out, I decided that the pink one in the bottom left corner just doesn't really work with the other ones. They don't look the same. So I'm just choosing a different one to replace it. And we continue on. So now we have all these together, and I'm really liking how this is looking. It's time to glue everything down to our base page. And there we have it. Our second page, front and back, is now completed. So join me next time for our third tutorial on the front and back for the third page. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to click and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more. Thanks!